Ahoy, ahoy, and welcome aboard. As always, I'm your Commander Tide. So, today we're going to be going over the deck Underhanded Business. This is a Jund token deck. You might be thinking, you already did a Jund token video with the Corvold video. Yeah, this is the deck Corvold was supposed to be. I didn't know how to build at the time, and we recently got a new card that truly ties this deck together. And so we'll cover that and how this is related to Bloomborough. But for right now, the key overview of the deck is that Vazi is a 5-mana Jund commander. She is a 3/3 human advisor. She has haste. You may tap her to make target opponent create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of treasure tokens you have created this turn. Whenever an opponent casts a spell or activates an ability, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it or activate it, put a 1/1 counter on target creature, then draw a card. So what she's going to be doing is I'm going to be paying you for a service or good. In some circles, this is called bribery. And in some circles, bribery is a crime. So we're going to be using some of the Thunder Junction crime mechanics in this deck. So, we are giving people mana, right? This is a group hug deck. No. There is no hugs in this deck. There's only shady back alley deals. So, Vazi, I keep saying so. So, Vazi gets bonuses if your opponent's used mana from a treasure source to cast a spell. Now, how do we stop them from using? If I give you three treasure mana, how do I get 3 treasure tokens? How do I get 3 counters off that and 3 draws instead of them using all 3 on one spell? You make a deal. I will give you X treasures if you cast Y spells. I will give you X treasures if you cast 1 spell or 2 spells, and you don't attack me this turn, and I'll give you 9 treasures. You get you get 2 1/1s. You can draw a card. We're gonna manipulate those 1/1s. We're gonna manipulate those treasure tokens. We're going to make some treasures, make more treasures, and we have a lot of other ways to really use them. And, again, we've just made a handshake deal. That can be broken. Sure, it can. But if you have no choice but to use treasure token as your mana, say you got Blood Mooned, you're going to use your treasure token mana. If you break my deal without having the way to win, I'm just going to pump everyone else at the table. I may not win, but neither will you. Take the deal. So, onward to the deck. Now, we're going to go in just straight into creatures. It's the biggest one, and immediately we're going to start with the newest one. Bloodroot Apothecary out of the Bloomborough set. Everyone's talking about this card. It's $17 already. It is a crazy squirrel. This 3-mana 3/3 Squirrel Druid has Toxic 2, meaning if it deals damage to an opponent, they get 2 poison counters. Everyone hates poison counters. You get 10, you lose. You have 40 health. Why does 10 kill you? I'm not in charge of that. If I was, 21 like commander damage. But toxic. It's a little more balanced than infect, but toxic. When Bloodroot Apothecary enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. Oh, how lovely. I'm bribing someone already. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters. If they spend the treasures we give them, because Bloodroot Apothecary, I get 1, you get 1. Vazi shows up, you get a second. You spend those, I force you to spend those. You make the deal to spend those, and you don't. I pump everyone up. I force you to spend them because I Blood Mooned you, and you don't happen to run a red deck. You're going to spend them. You have 4 treasure tokens. You get 4 mana before you kill yourself. I didn't poison you. That wasn't me. Maybe you should be more careful with your money. But so this card is what brought Vazi back for me. This is what made me want to remake Vazi. This is why I think Vazi is now into the meta and can compete with the meta, and where I think Bloodroot Apothecary truly shines in a group hug deck. So, what other cards do we have to facilitate Vazi and her bribery? We have Ancient Copper Dragon, a rather large creature that's going to make us a rather large amount of treasure tokens. Now, mind you, Vazi will be getting 1/1 counters onto any creature I choose every time someone casts a spell with those treasure tokens. So, making a bunch off Copper Dragon and passing them over with Vazi means I can buff Copper Dragon. I can buff Bloodroot Apothecary. All these creatures I'm talking about can be buffed, and they will be buffed, and heavily. After Copper Dragon, Bloodroot Apothecary, we're going to hop back over to Disciple of the Vault. This 1 mana, 1/1 human cleric is going to see a lot of play in this deck. Whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard from a battlefield, you may have target opponent use 1 life. Any graveyard, any person's side of the field. If they have to spend their treasures, if their treasures get blown up, if they are destroyed without being sacrificed, if they are sacrificed without being destroyed, target opponent lose 1. That is a crime. I bring this up because we're running the crime cards. At least a couple of them. Dockside Extortionist. Somehow extortion isn't a crime, but it is good business. When Dockside Extortionist enters at this 2 mana 1/2, we make X treasure tokens, or X the number of artifacts and enchantments an opponent controls. That's great. We get 7 treasure tokens, you get 7 treasure tokens. We're going to share the wealth for 3 spells. Cast 3 spells. Feign the Broker, I've talked about it a bit, I'll go over it real quick again. This combo is hard to pull off, but is incredible. Feign has 4 abilities. Sacrificing a creature will put 2/1 counters on a target creature. Removing a counter from a creature you control, creature or treasure token. Sacrificing an artifact will create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. And for 4 mana, you can untap Feign. Now, it takes a lot of setup to get here. We either need, doubling Season Parallel Lives to get 4 treasure tokens from each treasure he makes. Jolene and Zorn to pump that up by 2, making, I do believe it would be 9 each. No, you make 3, you make 6, you make 12. You make 12 treasure tokens each, thereby making infinite mana. Goldspan Dragon and Nixum Ancient, allowing those treasure tokens to be tapped for 6 mana entirely off of 1 treasure token, is super helpful in this, thereby making you extra mana. You have to be a little more careful on your mana expenditures, though. But he has a lot of abilities, and we don't have to start with that sacrifice because Vazi is going to help us get those 1/1 counters on early. Fathomfleet Swordjack. I mean, we already had Dockside Extortionist, but that's classic. This is a flavor card. This is a personal one. You know you got to have the pirates in here. It's me. I'm the pirate guy. Fathomfleet Swordjack is a 4 mana 4/3 orc pirate. Whenever it attacks, it deals damage to the player or planeswalker it is attacking, equal to the number of artifacts you control. I controlled artifacts. You know I did, because I gave them to you. Well, copies anyway. I get the originals, you get the forgeries. And this is a crime. It targets. And if you do kill it, for 6 mana, I can exile it from my graveyard for Encore. And I make a copy for each opponent. If they're still 3 people at the table, that's 3 Fathomfleet Swordjacks. They're swinging, they're targeting, they're pinging. This card is incredible. Forgotten Ancient. A 4 mana 0/3. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a 1/1 counter on him. Vazi puts 1/1 counter on him. I put a 1/1 counter on him. I'm giving you all this mana. You're going to want to cast all these spells. You're pumped up. So am I. And at the beginning of my upkeep, I may move any number of 1/1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. As he keeps getting built up, I then get to build my army. I am funding, not a militia, a syndicate. I'm funding a syndicate of crime. And speaking of syndicate and good business, or group hugs, as some people would think this deck is, Generous Plunderer, 2 mana 2/2. It has Menace, and at the beginning of my upkeep, I may create a treasure token. When I do, target opponent creates a tap treasure token. Now, the reason it's tapped is so it prevents them from spending it that turn against me. A blue deck would counter, a green deck or a white deck would, green deck and black deck would kill or destroy, a white deck would exile, a red deck would try to throw fireballs at it. They can't do that yet. And whenever Generous Plunderer attacks, it deals damage to defending player equal to the number of artifacts they control. Once again, I gave you a lot of mana. Until you spend it, it's gonna hurt. It's burning a hole in your pocket. If you don't want me to do like 30 damage because I gave you 30 treasure tokens in one swing, maybe spend it. Lessen the load. Goldspan Dragon, I just talked about this. It's that 5 mana dragon. Whenever it attacks or becomes target of a spell, you create a treasure token. I'm not really going to be able to target with spells. I run a lot of crime spells, not a lot of buff spells. That's my Arthur the Marigold Knight deck, my Swords Mice deck. You should check that video out. So far, it's my most popular one of recording this. But Goldspan Dragon, not only does it make treasure tokens, it gives my treasure tokens a second effect. They still have to tap, they still have to sacrifice, but I make 2 mana of any one color instead of 1. Goldvein Hydra is another new card from the Jund setup. This is an X green 0/0 Hydra. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. It enters with X 1/1 counters on it. Vazi is going to put more on it. Forgotten Ancient is going to put more on it. I have Tarion Soulclear put more on it. I have Vorinclex in Doubling Season, doubling the counters that it would come in with. When it dies, I make a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to its power. Now, once again, they're tapped. I won't be able to use them until my next turn. But if it dies, it'll likely die on someone else's turn. Not guaranteed, but I don't know. I'm 80% confident that someone will destroy it during their turn with a sorcery as opposed to destroying it when I attack. And if I did, it'd probably be an exile like, not Sunblast Angel, Angel of the Dire Hour exiling my attacking creatures. So this is going to make me a lot of treasure tokens. +1/+1 times 2 times 2. You're going to hear that one a lot because that is the equation of treasures. At least as far as I know. Theoretically, I could put another ×2 in here, but ×2 is everyone. And this isn't Group Hug. You need to make a deal for that. Grim Hireling is another classic creature for this deck I have, because this is still roughly based on that Corvul deck I made. So Grim Hireling is a 4 mana 3/2. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. For a black, I can sacrifice X treasure tokens. Target creature gets -X/-X till end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Even if I only -1/-1, that's still a crime. Hellkite Tyrant. It's a 6 mana 6/5 flying trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, I gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of my upkeep, if you control 20 more artifacts, you win the game. Now I always say a card that relies on your opponent to win is not so strong of a card, right? When I run this in my other treasure token decks, it's because I'm generating over 20 treasure tokens myself. The reason I'm running this in this deck is because I can still generate those 20 plus treasure tokens in myself, do it whenever I feel like, set up for the upkeep, but I am then generating those 20 plus on my opponent's side. I don't need to worry about if their artifacts, they'll make a lot of them, they'll give me enough artifacts to get that 20. I'm giving you those artifacts so I can get that 20. I pumped you with Vazi, I steal them back. It's a hilarious business deal. Well, business transaction. It's a hilarious transaction. That's the word I like. Up next, we have Jolene the Plunder Queen. Now, we're not running the second Jolene for the same reason I took Garruk's Uprising out of this deck. It's not so much about big creatures as it is about big token numbers, the amount of money I can gain. Brawn doesn't beat brains in this deck. I say brains, it's a business deal. But this Jolene is a 4 mana, red-green, 2/2. Whenever a player attacks one or more of your opponents, that attacking player creates a treasure token. If you don't attack me, you attack them, you get treasure. That's a good deal. That's good business. If you would create one or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional. And that's just for me. So if I attack my opponent, I would make 2. +1 times 2 times 2. This is that first +1. And something I can do with those treasure tokens, besides crack them and spend them, is I can sacrifice 5 of them to put 5 1/1 counters on Jolene. And I have some counter doublers. I have Vazi making her bigger. I have products with which I would like to spend my funds. Now, I don't run the other Jolene, I said, because we're not bigger. But if we're not bigger, then why do I have these things like Grim Hireling? And why do I have things like Ancient Copper Dragon? I have all these combat triggers. Like, what's going to trigger off combat? This is trigger off attack. What am I attacking with? I'm going to skip down here to Corvul the Fey Cursed King. You know he's still in here. Just because he's not the commander doesn't mean he doesn't fit in with the deck identity. This 5 mana legendary Dragon Noble 4/4 has flying. When he enters the battlefield for attacks, I sacrifice another permanent. And whenever I sacrifice a permanent, I put a 1/1 counter on Corvul and draw a card. That's the exact same thing as Vazi, but more personal as opposed to working with my opponents. If you spend mana from a treasure source on a spell, if you cast a spell using mana from a treasure source, I get a 1/1 on a creature. If I sacrifice a treasure token, I get a 1/1 counter on Corvul specifically, and I get a draw for each of those. I can spend all those. In the Corvul Commander version of this, I only needed to crack a total of 17 sacrifices for him to kill a tournament commander. I easily make over that. I'm making in 30 to 40 treasure tokens a year. That's 2 figures. Or maybe it's a 1 figure. I never really understood the figure one. I'm trying to stick with that business theme, but I know more about piracy than business. I'm not a business major. Going back up, we do have Kalain the Reclusive Painter. This is going to launder that money. This black-red legendary creature is a 1/2, and when Kalain enters, she makes you a treasure token. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. Now, we're going to have a lot of treasures. They're going to be worth more. They're going to be worth even more than more. And we're already focusing on counters. Just because we're not focusing on having a lot of big creatures in combat doesn't mean we can't make big creatures. We can pay for equipment and we can pay for training for them, right? We have money. Spend it. This deck truly is that good old-fashioned golden era capitalism. Up next, we have Kellogg Dangerous Mind. Once again, a black-red card. This 3-mana human is a 3/2 with first strike and haste. Reminiscent of Alessia to me. This is Alessia's colors almost, except for it's red-black instead of red-white-black. But anyway, whenever Kellogg attacks, you make a treasure token. +1/+1 times 2. Times 2. That's anywhere from 1 treasure to 9 treasures. If I sacrifice 5 treasures, I gain control of target creature for as long as I control Kellogg. Activate only as a sorcery. Not only is that bribery, it's kidnapping. And that is 2 crimes. Still only counts as 1 crime for the purpose of triggering my crime cards. And that crime card is Magda the Horde Master. Truly the only thing I have right now that specifically states when you commit a crime. But this is all I need. Because I'm already going to be committing these crimes. These are already cards I would be running. So getting some value off them is nice. This 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature says, whenever I commit a crime, I make a tap treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. She could sacrifice me 3 treasures and create a 4/4 red scorpion dragon creature token with flying and haste. I'm going to do this as a sorcery, so just during my turn, not in response to anything. But cards like Magda and Kellogg and Jolene would allow me to get use out of things that make me tap treasure tokens like Gold Vein Hydra. Because they're the ones sacrificing and outside of the treasure token's effect. They're not making the mana, they're using their own ability, using the treasure token itself as a resource. So that's going to get around things like Blind Obedience and other such things that make your cards come in tapped. We also run the classic Magda, the Brazen Outlaw. This is a 2-mana 2/1 version of her that gives my other dwarves 1/0, which is not a lot of them currently, but it is also other Magda. Whenever a dwarf I control becomes tapped, I make a treasure token. I can then sacrifice 5 treasures to search my library for an artifact or a dragon card. I put it directly on the battlefield and I shuffle. I have a couple dragons already. I got Ancient Copper Dragon, I got Goldspan Dragon, I got Hellkite Tyrant, I got Corvold. I have 8 great artifacts down here, and I'll get into those in a bit. But we have a lot of search targets, and if I had blue, I'd run Encroaching Mycosynth, and I'd search everything. But moving on, we're back to that game plan of giving our opponents treasure tokens. Something happens, and we make a profit. Mana Gorger Hydra. It is a very weak 3-mana 1/1 with Trample. Whenever a player casts a spell, you, your opponents, anyone in the game, you put a 1/1 counter on Mana Gorger Hydra. Between Mana Gorger, Kalain can give it a potentially +3, Vazi giving it 1/1, Forgotten Ancient buffing it up, my counter doublers, Mana Gorger will get big fast, and your opponents are going to have to be worried about how many spells they want to cast with all the treasure tokens you've given them. Because while the idea is make them kill themselves with Bloodroot Apothecary, we can't always have a 1 out of 99 card. We can give ourselves consistency for it, but we can't always. Because you also need consistency for that consistency. If you're trying to run Worldly Tutor, you need a kind of Mystic Tutor to search that Worldly Tutor. That's kind of what Standard is. That's why I like Commander. You can spread out. As someone once said, it's for building bad decks. It's for building an idea and having fun. It's for showing that variety. Moving on, we have Marionette Apprentice and Marionette Master. I'm going to cover these cards at once because they're roughly the same. They are both black human artificers. They are 1/2s and 1/3s, very weak cards. They have the Fabricate ability. Marionette Apprentice has Fabricate 1 and Master has 3, meaning when they enter the battlefield, you have a choice. 3/1/1 counters or 3/1/1 color servo artifacts. If you need artifacts, you go for that, but we generate our own artifacts and we're perfectly fine without them. We go for the 1/1 counters because they both say when an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, opponents lose life. Marionette Master pings 1 from each opponent. Marionette Apprentice pings 1 from each opponent. Marionette Master pings her power from a target opponent, which is a crime. And then the other difference is that Marionette Apprentice does say creature you control, so creature or artifact. But we're not covering sacrificing creatures. I covered that in the Corvold deck. I'll probably link it somewhere up in this top corner right about now. What is this at? 20 minutes. Because I don't like having... It's not bad to. I just personally don't like having to have a sacrifice mechanic, have a resource sacrifice, and have an outlet to sacrifice them. Whereas I have a sacrifice mechanic, my treasure tokens are my resource and their own outlet. That's kind of why I kind of fell in love with treasure tokens. Moving on, we have Mirkwood Bats. Like the marionettes, whenever I sacrifice a treasure token, each opponent will lose 1 life. Unlike them, it's also when I create a treasure token. And this is a 4-mana 2/3 flying, making it hard to block, meaning I could get those combat triggers or those attack triggers using this. But I prefer it to kind of be a static ability. Moving on to the next static ability and an all-around great wall, the 7-mana Nyxbloom Ancient. This enchantment creature is a 5/5 trample, and if I would tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. Now, I went over this in other videos, but I'll go over it here too, because we're here now. This treasure token specifies you have to tap it and sacrifice it. You are still tapping it as part of the cost, meaning, as far as Nyxbloom cares, you are tapping for 3 now. If you have the Goldspan Dragon and you use the ability to tap for 2 mana of color, you're now making 6. Your land's tapping for 1, tapping for 6. We have Pitiless Plunderer, making people think twice about committing crimes against us, because this will give us treasure tokens back. If another creature you control dies, I sacrifice it, they kill it, they make me kill it, I create a treasure token immediately, but not if he dies. But at 1/4, it's hard for him to die. Next, we have Professional Facebreaker. I do love this art, but I wish to set a different preferred printing. Where did it go? Can I... Where's the change printing? Switch printing. Because while this is super cool, my friend owns them, there is nothing on the back that shows what the card actually does. I know what the card does. I have like 7 of them. I have one behind me. It's just on the floor, kind of, actually. Don't tell Vazi. But Professional Facebreaker is a 3-mana 2/3. It has Menace, meaning it has an easier time of inflicting combat damage. And it has an ability that says, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. You may sacrifice a treasure token and exile a top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Now, because that's an active ability, I can do it during my opponent's turn. But if I don't have mana left over, if I don't have anything untapped, I just lose that card I exiled. That, we're not really doing too much with. That's not so important in this deck, unless we're low on draw and we need something. What's important is that create a treasure token, because you can create a minimum of 1 to 3 just off of its own effect, depending on how many players you hit. It doesn't matter how many creatures hit, it matters how many players are hit. Moving on, we have Steve, Sakura Tribe Elder. This 2-mana 1/1 sacrifices itself to search your library for a basic land card to put on the battlefield tapped. This isn't a bad card in any deck. It's a great card if you run green, because it's a cheap search. It gives you a blocker. It can be the target of a spell, and if they target it with anything, you just, in response, sacrifice it. This isn't as good without Corvold on the field, and Corvold as a commander makes that consistent, because Steve sacrifice himself means Corvold would get the bonus draw and the 1/1 counter. But even then, it's still free land. Steve's great. He's a Solemn Simulacrum that kills itself. Up next, Sardian Avenger. Now, this is a fun card I stole from my friend's Goblin deck. Don't tell him it's not in there anymore. This 2-mana 1/1 is First Strike Trample. What it does is, when it attacks, it gets XO until the end of turn, or X number of artifacts your opponents control. The artifacts we bribed them with. Whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, like they're trying to cast their spells using those treasure tokens, they're trying to cheat me by using 7 treasure tokens for one spell instead of 7 different spells, they're going to take a damage. And it deals a damage to that player. That's targeting. That's a crime. Taurine Mauler is once again another one of those. My opponents are casting spells with treasure tokens deck. If I'm facilitating their plays, I want to cut of the profits. I'm investing in them illegally. It's a 3-mana shapeshifter with changeling, meaning it's every creature type. It's always got changeling, it's always every creature type. It is a dragon. This is searchable. It starts as a 2/2, but whenever an opponent casts a spell, I may put a 1/1 counter on it. If it was with the treasure, Vazi may also put a 1/1 counter on it. We're really close to one of our counter doublers. That's another counter on it. But moving on, we have the classic Tireless Provisioner. Why are they tireless? Are they constantly trying to stack up food and treasure? No, they're in every green deck. This 3-mana 3/2 landfall ability gives you either a treasure token or a food token. And we don't want the food. That takes 2 mana to sacrifice it. We want the treasure. We'll buy food. We'll buy all the food and sell it at a marked up price. Once again, we're underhanded businessmen. Up next we have Vorinclex the Monstrous Raider. I have these Phyrexian copies because they are cheap. Can I read them? Sure I can. But I don't think you can, so let me help you out. We'll go call time. Vorinclex the Monstrous Raider is the cheaper of the two. 8 mana, 6 mana. The 6 mana 6/6 has trample and haste. That's great and all. What's really cool is the abilities. So all the Phyrexians have what I call like mirrored effects. What happens on one side, the opposite will happen on the other. So Vorinclex Monstrous Raider says if you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent player, put twice as many of those kinds of counters on a permanent player instead. Meaning Vazi's 1/1 counter I put on would be 2 1/1 counters. The Bloodroot Apothecary, putting 2 poison counters would be 4 poison counters. So just speeding up that decay that happens within capitalism naturally. So if this is a mirrored ability and I make double counters, the opposite would be my opponent would make half counters. If my opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half as many of them rounded down. Now that's the interesting part. If I split 4, it's 2. If I split 3, I get 1, and then I have this one in the middle. What happens? We get half here and half here. From there, we're just gonna round that down to 1 card to 1 left. We have exactly 1 left because we rounded down. If I start with 1, I split that in half, round it down. You get no counters if you're just running a slow counter deck. If you happen to have counters in your deck, you get nothing. If you're building a counter deck, you're probably just getting an average amount of counters. But that's kind of what I find interesting about this Vorinclex specifically. That I can change counters to 0. Rounding down is very rare in this game. Like, against your opponents. The game tries to be fun and give you in favor cards. Like, oh, discard half your library, round it up. Or something like that. They try to make it so you still have something to play with, something to do. This would just remove it. That's good business. At least for me. Vorinclex Voice of Hunger is the next Vorinclex. This one's a little more expensive, and it's a 7/6. Once again, it still has the same effects as here, Trample Haste. This one is the mana one. Now, I don't care so much about my effect, because I have something like Bootlegger Stash, which also kind of beats my opponent having a Vorinclex or copying my Vorinclex. But what Vorinclex does is, if I would tap a land for mana, I add an additional mana that land produced. So if I have a green-white land, the Selznaya one, or let's just say because it's the one I can remember in my head, Orzhov Basilica, black-white, I tap that, I add a black and a white, and then I add 1 more, either black or white, making 3 mana. I don't get to make both. I make 1 of what was produced. So for a basic land, I tap a forest, I make 2 forests. Now that, once again, works with Nyxwhelm Ancient. I tap 1, make a second, I make 6. You make 6 mana off that. But I'm treasure tokens. I have more mana in this deck. You can laugh at the Corvold deck. I know it's less than other guys' decks, but it works. It works, But But I don't care so much that I get double mana, essentially. What I care about is, once again, that mirror. I care that my opponents, if they tap a land for mana, not for any other reason, not for a secondary effect on it, but for mana, it does not untap during their next untap step. Meaning, if I've been pumping you with treasure and you don't want to use it because I have, Skirk Frost, I have Sardian Avenger, I have Bloodroot Apothecary out, you don't want to spend that mana? That's fine. You don't get land. You want to play the game? Spend the treasure tokens. I've taken away your ability to use land. That's why Vorinclex is in here. Buffing my own mana? Sure, great. I can play more, harder, faster. Forcing my opponent to play my game? That's good business. Up next, Vraska the Silencer, another card from Thunder Junction. Love this card. This is just hilarious with the amount of crimes we're doing and the amount of treasure focus we have. Now, she doesn't make tokens, so I don't get a lot of, duplication or value off that. But she does prevent my opponent's plays. So for 3 mana, this black-green 3/3 legendary has Death Touch. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, I may pay 1 mana. If I do, I return that card to the battlefield tapped under my control. It's a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifices artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and it loses all the card types. It's no longer a creature. It's no longer a goblin. It's no longer a dragon. It's no longer a Vishino. It would keep a super type like legendary, though. That is something it would keep. It would just, however, be considered essentially a treasure token with the same name and the same abilities. So, what that means is if they have their own replacement effect, like, Leyline of the Void, they do get to choose the priority on their turn. I would exile it instead of it dying, and they say no, it gets exiled. But if I take something that has an active ability or a passive, like if I take my opponent's, what's a great one here? If I take my opponent's my opponent's Bloodroot Apothecary. Yeah, if I take my opponent's Bloodroot Apothecary, I have all these effects twice. I have it entering to make us treasure tokens. I have, if an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, they get 2 poison counters. Twice if I have mine out. That's what this is. This is like that Miracle Lord of Bones, where you're making your creatures into enchantments. This is making my opponent's creatures into artifacts for myself. And finally, Zorn. It's your boy. He's a 3 mana, red 3/2 elemental. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, you instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. That's that second one in that treasure equation you're going to hear so much about. +1/+1 ×2 ×2. And that is the order you would do it if you have priority. If your opponent has priority, it's ×2 ×2 +1/+1. Because 1 × 2 is 2, × 2 is 4, +1 is 5, +1 is 6. That is the least amount of treasures you can make if I still have all those. You could do 1 + 2 × 2 is 4, +1 is 5, × 2 is 10. Still more than 6. You do the multiplications, then you do the additions to get the least amount. Up next, we're going to go over to lands real quick, because I wasn't running a lot of these in my Corvold deck. Certain ones like Yavimaya and Urborg, I didn't have a spare copy, because my Corvold deck is a fully finished deck. Not to knock on proxies, most of my decks are proxies. I don't have the funds to spend on Magic the Gathering currently. I'm kind of hoping that this will transition into some money, and I can then spend it on cards for the channel, do deck reviews and the like, open packs. But I didn't have any of these spares. Treasure Vault, absolute must. Zaitor's Proving Grounds, we're a 3-color deck. Of course you're running a Triome. You need a good amount of your basics so you can search them. Command Tower, Commander deck. Mines of Moria, it's because I don't need to bring anything back. If anything does go to the graveyard, it's making me treasures. Reliquary Tower, because I still run Corvold, I can still draw a bunch. Vazi can make me draw a bunch. I don't want to have to lose those cards, but if I did, Mines of Moria. Rogue's Passage. Now, I didn't have a spare at the time. I have a bunch now. This is mostly for Corvold to just get in there and swing like hell. But it can also make something like Sardian Avenger or Fathomfleet Swordjack or Managorger Hydra swing like hell. Savage Lands. This is what is known as a bullshit Triome. At least that's what I call them. They're the original Triomes, but they're a little slow. We're running Smoldering Marsh and Cinderglade as our conditional lands. There are Mountain Forest dual type conditionals. So we are running 32 of them. That is more. I was running 33, but I kind of need to get this down to 100. We're going to go right on up to enchantments. We're going to run Black Market Connections. This is going to make us treasure tokens slowly. This is going to draw us cards if we need it, which we shouldn't. This is going to make us shapeshifters, which we don't need. I mean, if we need bodies, but we don't need that. We need that treasure tokens, but we're now on a timer, which means we need to conclude our deals fast. We need to get out by the end of escrow. I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure I'm using it right. To help do that, Blood Moon. If your opponent's not running any amount of red in their deck, if they have no use for mountains, if they liked a lot of the unique lands, or they're running a 5-color deck, so they kind of had to run all the triomes, Blood Moon is going to force them to use your treasure tokens. If they do not have it, basically, they haven't been drawing them, you've just shut them out of the game unless they use your treasure tokens. They'll be willing to do any deal you give them. Also, in your deals, if you do not have out something like Swiftfoot Boots or whatever, make sure your deals cast two spells using these treasure tokens, and none of them target my Vazi, and I'll give you 12 treasure tokens. So you can keep the Vazi and get the effect afterwards. Just remember that. That's good business. But Blood Moon can force people to play. It'll also hurt you a bit, but we use red. Up next is Cryptolith Rites. Now, this is something I should have been using. I was using Paradise Mantle or Springleaf Drum for the Magda. And this not only will let me tap my dwarves, making me treasure tokens, and also mana at the same time. This can work with Nyxbloom Ancient, making me 3 each. This is going to help just generate even more mana. There's nothing wrong with having more mana, unless you got nothing to spend it on. But between things like Vazi and Korvold, we should have a good amount of draw. Up next, another Timer Descent into Avernus. This is the card that really is fun with Vazi. I make 2, you make 2, I take 2, you take 2, you get 2 more. Wait, why did you give me 2 more? Oh, it's because I have Bloodroot Apothecary out. I have Disciple of the Vault out. I have Hellkite Tyrant out. I am putting this game not only on a timer, but I'm putting it on fast forward. I'm facilitating your plays, I'm facilitating my plays, and if I have out something like Forgotten Ancient or Taurian Maul or Managorger Hydra, all the plays I facilitate help me too. I am getting a cut of the profits. Doubling Season and Parallel Lives are next. Now these are those classic green treasure token, token doublers. Parallel Lives is a 4-mana enchantment that would make twice as many tokens. And Doubling Season is a 5-mana enchantment that makes twice as many tokens. But it also makes twice as many counters. So this, with Monstrous Raider, Vorinclex Monstrous Raider, makes quadruple tokens. Vazi puts 1, Vorinclex makes it 2, Doubling Season makes it 4. We're not really putting a lot, well, I mean, we do technically have a lot with Jolene. Jolene makes 5, 10, 20. But these are the same card, just slightly different. Up next, Reign of Riches. If we're making treasure tokens, we're going to be spending treasure tokens. For 5 mana, we get 2 treasure tokens. We have our 1/1/2/2 combo. If that's applicable, which in theory it should be. We want to search that. We want to get that out quickly. Each turn, the first spell we cast that used any amount of mana from a treasure source has Cascade. I do specify treasure source because it just says treasure. I like to say source just to really specify. Because this is a treasure. Token artifact creature. Your creatures that I got through Vraska are a treasure, and they can make mana. I don't have to use only treasure mana to cast a spell. I just have to use at least 1 mana. If I cast a 10 mana spell and I cracked 1 treasure token for it, I get Cascade. Revel in Riches is the final enchantment we're running. This is a must-have if you have access to black and you are a treasure token deck. It is a win con in and of itself. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure token artifact. We already know what those are. We've been talking about them all video. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Now the way you beat this is you either remove your opponent from the game, which is one of the hardest ways. You remove Revel in Riches, which I don't have the best colors for it, but it's a pretty hard thing to do if I run something like Red Pyroblast, Green Elemental Blast. Or you make it so I have less than 10 treasure tokens, which is the easiest. You try to remove Revel in Riches, you try to remove me, I will spend the mana. I will save myself. I will get myself an extra turn to do it again. In theory, I can make more treasure tokens than you can lessen me. And once again, this combos with blood money to make a huge amount of treasure tokens in one go. Because we are a crime deck, we are going to be spot removing, giving us a treasure token, and we are going to be board removing, giving us a lot of treasure tokens. So, we're going to move over to sorcery in that note. Blood money is a 7-mana sorcery that destroys all creatures. For each non-token creature destroyed this way, I make a tapped treasure token. So if I destroy a full board of 10 creatures, 5 are mine, 5 are my opponent's, I make 10 tapped treasure tokens. Revel in Riches says, oh, your opponent lost 5 creatures in that? Make 5 untapped treasure tokens. That's 15 right there off of that spell, setting me up for Revel in Riches next turn. This combo is huge. It's almost double tokens. If I have no creatures and I destroy all my opponent's creatures, it's double tokens. Up next, Brass's Bounty. A little heavy of a card. We don't really have a way to reduce that 6 colorless cost of this 7-mana sorcery. But in theory, if I can cast this with only using lands and not affecting the amount of lands I have with something like Vorinclex or Nixum Ancient, I get 7 treasures. For each land I control, create a treasure token. This was the only way for a while to kind of get that equivalent amount of treasure tokens. Because something like... where'd it go? Treasure Vault. If I have 11 lands on the field... I should say 7. Still 7. If I have 7 lands on the field, including Treasure Vault, I tap 6 of them for 6 mana. I tap Treasure Vault and sacrifice it, making me 3 treasure tokens. Whereas something like Blood Money, I tap... not Blood Money, Brass's Bounty, I tap 7 mana for 7 treasure tokens. And it doesn't help that it's Admiral Beckett Brass, who is referenced in the card, and that is my favorite card. Up next, we have some... we're going to do Cultivate real quick, and then we're just going to some... just rapid fire off some crimes. Cultivate, that classic 3-mana green search. You can use Kodama's Reach. You can use Reckless Overgrowth? Reckless Expansion? You can use... God, I forgot. Like 3 visits. You can. There's a lot of green search. This is just the one I happen to use. I should use more, but I don't have space. If you would like to, absolutely take out what you don't like and put in more search. I believe this doesn't need search. I have had good experience with it so far, but that's the beauty of Commander. Put your own flavor on it. Get your inspiration where you find it. So, rapid firing some of these crimes. We have Contract Killing. 5 mana, destroys target creature, you make 2 treasure tokens, plus making a crime off Magna, that makes you tap treasure token. Cut to Ribbons, for 2 mana, you deal 4 damage to target creature, that's a crime. And then while it's in your graveyard with the Aftermath ability, for X mana black, you can make each opponent lose X life. That's what we're spending our treasure tokens on. We also then have Decimate, a 4 mana red-green. It is a sorcery and it has to destroy a target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, target land. If your opponents don't have all those combined, you have to target your own stuff. But you do have to have legal choices for all of those targets when you cast it. Feed the Swarm, a 2-mana sorcery that destroys creatures or enchantments an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Grim Bounty, a 4-mana sorcery. It destroys a creature or planeswalker. Create a treasure token. That's a crime. And Vandal Blast. This is a crime and not a crime. For 1 mana, it destroys a target artifact you don't control. Crime. Overload, at 5 mana, it destroys each artifact you don't control. Not a crime. Doesn't target. Toxic Delge, not a crime. 3 mana, as an additional cast, you must pay X life. All creatures get XX till the end of turn. That's a good board wipe. You only really have to pay 8, unless your opponent has something crazy. But this beats Indestructible. If your opponent happens to run the frowned upon Blightsteel Colossus, you pay 11. Blightsteel Colossus is gone. They have to sacrifice it. It has 0 power. It's not destroyed. It's just gone. We're running Demonic Tutor as our search right here in Sorcery. We have some more search and instance, but for Sorcery, this is all we got. We only got 2 more sections left. This video's actually going a little fast, but it's very similar to that Corville video I linked at the 20 minutes. So, Beast Within will be our first instant. This is a 3-mana instant. It's a crime. It destroys a target permanent. Maybe it's a crime, actually. It could be your own permanent. But its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Now, because of what I call the power of the pyramid, power of the period, not pyramid power, this sentence is separate from the next sentence because of this period. So what that means is it destroys target permanent. Regardless of target permanent being destroyed, as long as the spell was cast legally, its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. Meaning, if I cast it and you give your creature hexproof, I could not have targeted the creature and the spell fizzles. If I target a indestructible creature or you give it indestructible, let's just say I'm an idiot and I target a creature naturally indestructible, it is not destroyed. It was targeted. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. It's because, one, they are separate abilities because of that period. They're separate timings and separate triggers. I need that target originally because it looks at that target, looks at who owns it. That's the state-based action. It looks who owns it, so it knows where to put that creature token. If the spell fizzles, the spell fizzles. But up next we have Big Score. This is a 4-mana red instant. There's 2 cards like this in Unexpected Windfall and Pirate's Pillage. Like I said in the Pirate Guide, I really wanted to run Pirate's Pillage. But I only had space for one of them. I could make space for more, but I just needed at least one of them, and I found it. The reason I have Big Score is Unexpected Windfall is an instant, but it is 2 mana, 2 red. This is 3 mana, 1 red, meaning it's a little more consistent to play because I need less colors. Pirate's Pillage is a 3 mana, 1 red, but it's a sorcery, so I can't play it whenever I want to in response to things on other people's turns. If someone's playing an Omission I can't draw, I can't play Pirate's Pillage in response. So that's why Big Score. I do have to discard a card, but that's fine. I can use my Zamoria to get rid of it, or maybe I just didn't need it at the time. It wasn't helpful. I draw 2 cards and I create 2 treasure tokens. I can also, discard something like Battlefleet Swordjack, got Encore, but that's important. What's important is 2 draw, 2 treasure. That's a good deal. Up next is Chaos Warp. Now this is also potentially a crime. It's 3 mana instant, and the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library and then reveals the top card of their library. If you do not shuffle, you do not get the reveal, because that is not a period, that is a comma. So it's the same effect, same sentence. If it is a permanent card that was revealed, they put it onto the battlefield. Now it says they and the owner because it's not opponent. You can do it to your own stuff. But if it's a commander, and the way I know most people play commander, you have your commander in a separate sleeve so you don't accidentally shuffle into your deck. That being said, it is now considered a marked card if it's in your deck. So you can't let it go to your deck, and you have to choose to send it to command zone. That's just a removal for commander. If it hits a token, that does go to the deck, and it fizzles there because it has to state-based check that it went to the deck. You do get the reveal. If you target your own permanents, it goes to your deck, you shuffle, and you get the effect, and you might be able to put something out. But if we look, we have 18 cards that are not permanents. Everything else is a permanent. We're going to hit something. Whether it's good or not, that's up to the situation. But we're going to hit something. Deadly Derision. This is another crime. It's a 4 mana instant that destroys a creature or planeswalker and makes a creature token. It's pretty much the same card as Grim Bounty, but destroy a creature or planeswalker, create a treasure token. Destroy a creature or planeswalker, create a treasure token. The only difference is instant speed. Riveteer's Charm. This thing is nasty. There is no bad effect on it, but there is a worst effect on it. This card is Jund colors, and that is its cost. Black, red, green. At instant speed, you choose one of 3 modes. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value they control among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Meaning, they don't choose if it's a creature or planeswalker, but if they have a 4 mana planeswalker, like Jung-Yi, one of those minus only planeswalkers, and 8 mana Avacyn, they're going to sacrifice their Avacyn. If they have a classic planeswalker, it's like 6 mana, and something like Forgotten Ancient, they're going to sacrifice that 6 mana planeswalker. That's the best ability. Up next is what I think is the worst ability, because I didn't build this deck around it. It's a great ability, especially if you're running something like a Faldorn the Dread Herald. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. Great ability. But I don't base my deck around playing cards from exile. And if I don't have the mana, which is something I always worry about, I'm a warrior, those cards are gone. And it's happened to me a lot. Like, I get maybe 1 card out of them. Maybe I hit a bunch of land, and I can only play 1 this turn. I can play 1 next turn. But you do have 2 of your turns. Actually, no. You only have 1. Yeah, it's your next end step. So you have to play this during your opponent's turn to see what you get. Make plans. Up next, we have the tutors. Vampiric Tutor and Worldly Tutor. At 1 mana, these have costs. Vampiric Tutor costs 2 life to search a card and put it on top of your library after you shuffle your library. Worldly Tutor reveals the card you search, and it has to specifically be a creature. Then you shuffle your library and put that card on top. The difference is blue, white, and green tutors search a specific card type. Black will search anything. Black does not reveal it, but you lose 2 life. Green, blue, and white do reveal what you search, so your opponents know what you will have in your hand next turn. Generally, you're going to do these during your opponent's end step before your turn, so no one can really interact with them, and people have probably tapped out. Ooh, sorry about that. I had to check a text real quick. Your opponent's tap out. Up next, the last section, artifacts. We're nearly done. We're keeping this at an hour somehow. So, Arcane Signet, well, we're going to play tests in this deck, but Arcane Signet and Soul Ring are classic land rocks. So, of course, we're using those. Mox Opal is a little less classic, but at 0 mana, needing 3 or more artifacts to activate it isn't that hard, seeing as it itself is 1 artifact. If you get that perfect hand, that land, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Mox Opal can trigger. Moving back over here, we got Bucknart's Everfull Purse. This 2 mana artifact lets you spend 1 mana to roll a d4, and you create any number of treasure tokens that's equal to the result. So if I roll 1, 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 2 times 2. If I roll 3, plus 1 plus 1 times 2 times 2. After you roll, the player to your right gains control of Bucknart's Everfull Purse. Generally, the game goes clockwise. To your left is the next player. Meaning, it'll be 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds before you get it back. If they do spend it. But you want your opponent to spend. You want them to get the church tokens. If not, they're just going to hold it. That's an artifact they control. That helps things like starting an Avenger. We get all the bonuses because we're built for this. Our opponents get maybe 4. We're getting a minimum of 6 if we have our doublers out, right? We get the bonuses. We get to make full use. Next, we're going to talk about Masquid Nexus. This is a card that you don't have to put in here. I put it in here to work with that Magda. I made everything a dragon. I can now search everything. If I have any amount of synergies that require creatures, I have Masquid Nexus for it. Swiftfoot Boots, I have this over Lightning Reach because I don't like the Shroud. It's a little weird to work with. I can afford that extra 1 because I have the treasure tokens. Bootlegger's Stash. This is a card that truly makes this deck work. This gets around things like Vorinclex and the like. It's a 6 mana green artifact that gives our lands an additional ability. They may tap to create a treasure token. Now that sounds weird. Like, why would I want to spend a land I could make a mana with to make a treasure token? Well, it could be something like Reliquary Tower, which makes colorless. That gets you a color. Your opponent could have Vorinclex, and if I tapped it for the mana, I wouldn't get to tap it next turn. I tapped it for making a treasure token. That's not mana. I have token doublers and generators. That's more than 1 token. This card, when it came out in Capenna, revolutionized the treasure token game for me. That's why I made a Jund treasure token deck, because I don't play a lot of green. I don't hate green, but green and white generally aren't in my bag. White's a little less because I have less white decks. I'm trying to find one, but I didn't get a white pirate in the Caverns of Ixalan set. I got a vampire pirate, Don Andreas. I love him. I made a deck around him. I didn't get a white one. I got a green one. I couldn't make a 5-color Morphon pirate deck. That's my main goal. I just need 1 white pirate. The final artifact we have is Tarian's Soul Cleaver, or as I call it, Mini Corvold. This 1 mana legendary equipment equips for 2 and gives your creature vigilance. Now, none of that's Corvold. That's not why I call it Mini Corvold. It's because it says whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on a equipped creature. That's Mini Corvold. You don't get the draw, but you get your opponent's artifacts or creatures hit in the graveyard too. You make a second Corvold whenever you put this on something, or you just put on a Corvold and make a double Corvold. This card makes more Corvolds. But so, that was Underhanded Business from New Capenna, Vazi the Key Negotiator. before we go over to playtest, I'm going to shell. I'm going to shill right now. If you like this deck, you like this content, you can check out more of my decks on Moxfield under Title Fox 35. I plan on putting deck descriptions on all my decks. You can check out my YouTube if you're seeing this on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, you can go check out my YouTube. I have a link in my Twitch. I have a link to my Twitch and my YouTube. I do deck profiles, deck building, or card tech every Monday. And then Thursday through Sunday, I kind of do whatever I'm feeling like at the moment. We're playing Dragon's Age Origins at the moment, and some Dungeonborn. That's been really fun. I'm enjoying all of that. But now you listen to the show. Let's go over the playtest. Let's see some of these hands. Now, once again, I'm going to preface this by saying these are hands in a vacuum. I don't have the interaction I would playing against someone, right? So, turn one. We're going to start by drawing. Beautiful. Play a swamp and pass. Next turn. Oh, beautiful. Boom, boom. Kalane at token. Treasure. Next turn. Play this. Boom, boom, boom. Tap the treasure. We make one. Our opponents make one. And because I had to use it, adding a 1/1 counter. So it's now 4/4. Next turn. Green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vazi. Adding a counter. Now our opponents have 1 treasure token currently. I didn't make any, that's fine. Urborg. 1, 2, 3. Descent into Avernus. I have 2 mana right here. 4, 3, 4, 3. Can't afford anything. That's fine. We're just going to pass. We're going to wait. Next turn. Set counters. 2. I take 2 damage. Treasure. We have now 2 treasures. We're going to play for 4 mana. What is this? Deadly Derision. Destroying a creature they control, generating us another treasure token. Graveyard. 1, 2, 3. Destroy. Taurian Mauler. This gets 2 counters. So now this is already a 4/4. This is a 4/4. This is a 4/4. Anytime they spend anything, this gets bigger. I'll make it bigger again with Vazi, and they'll get the Apothecary. We'll do one more turn. Boom. Zorn. Beautiful. Correcting all these, we play Zorn. Alright, I forgot. Add a counter. Add a counter. This is beautiful right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ancient Copper Drain. I have no way to give it a haste, but that's fine. Because none of these work on it, but that's fine. That's fine. This next turn is a threat. I said one turn, but we'll do another real quick. Adding a counter. Adding a counter. Add token. Treasure. 6. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 because we have Zorn. Look at all this mana. I forgot. I used 5 counters on him. That's huge. I swing for 11. That's all I'm doing. I'm just going to swing for 11. Where's the roll card? Player. Roll a d20. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All this, they get that 7. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I do actually have to have some discard, so graveyard there. Draw. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom. Add a counter. Now my treasure token is tapped for 3. This isn't a vacuum. I didn't get to really do crimes. I'm assuming I'm doing crimes, but this is kind of how the deck's working. We'll do another play test. Because we're still even not at an hour. Bad hand, no. Mull. Bad hand, no. Mull, we're at -1. Playable hand. What don't we want? We don't want this. Bottom of the library. We start, we draw. Reliquary Tower. Pass. Next turn. Swamp. Pass. Next turn. Mountain. 1, 2, 3. Slow them down. Next turn. Urborg, that's a mountain. 1 and 2. Those are 2 mountains for Bucknards. Boom, boom. We're going to tap this. We have 1 red floating. Player. Roll a 4-sided dice. Roll to 2. We make 2 treasures. We're going to use one of them with that red for Magda. Next turn. Whoops. That goes back on top. Where you can play Cinderglade. We have these 2 basics. It's unfortunately still a mountain. What we can do, however, our opponent has that. We can declare an attack. Make a treasure. 1, 2, and a treasure from Managorger Hydra. 1, 2. Get rid of that. To Beast Within, giving someone a beast token. Their turn, they tap that. We get it back. They get, like, I don't know, 1 treasure token. That's fine. They cast a spell, add a counter. Next turn. Ooh, beautiful. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grim Hireling. 5. Player roll 3. Oh, beautiful. We have 3 treasures. Nothing unfortunate to spend it on. That's fine. Because we only have 4 mana. We'll declare an attack. We fly over it. Actually, we don't fly over. We don't declare an attack. That's not the smartest. We're just going to pass turn. Next turn. Didn't want to use that. That's fine. Swamp. Red. Red. 3, 3, 3. Bop, bop, bop. We get out Vazi. And everyone took 3 damage. Well, one opponent took 3 damage. This guy is probably at 4 counters. Whoops. I'm just going to do the slow way. So he's now a 5/5. I'm going to swing with him. You're going to block with the token. You're not going to let that go through. That's fine. We're going to pass turn. They get treasure tokens. They spent that. It's our turn. We're going to crack this for this player. Roll 2. Treasure, treasure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Deadly Derision, which makes us another treasure. Tap that. They get 3. And now I have this sitting here. This can't be a black, but that's fine. You see where this deck's going, right? Now, this isn't a vacuum. I don't really have anyone to test this against. I will be making this deck eventually, and then I can play it on Spell Table. But that will be all for Underhanded Business, thanks to the new Bloomborough card, Bloodroot Apothecary, where I truly believe this card shines is in this deck with Vazi, in this group business deck. So thank you for sticking with me through this whole video. I tried something new with an intro in the beginning. I hope you guys like that. I hope it kind of lets you know what the deck would be about, so I can go on my tangents and you would be able to, you know, kind of decide if you wanted to stay knowing what the video would be about. Once again, get in the comments. Let me know how you feel with the format. If you want me to do more whiteboard stuff, you like the mock field stuff, If you like the intros, you want me to put a little something in between them so you know when that clip ends. Love to hear feedback from you. But as always, I've been your Captain Tide. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next time. Hoist your colors high and fly them with pride.